Hi, I'm Alycia Kinchloe, the owner of Kinchloe Law, a family law practice based in the Philadelphia area. Today we're going to talk about emergency custody petitions filed in Philadelphia County. Now, the reason why I specify Philadelphia County is that the different counties can treat their emergency petition process differently. This is the part of the video where I remind you that you want to speak with an attorney licensed in your state who's also familiar with the rules and regulations in your particular county about the facts specific to your case, and that this video is not legal advice and it's for informational purposes only. All right, now when you file an emergency petition for custody, generally there's something going on that is urgent. There is a safety issue or there's some type of time sensitive issue. Now, when it comes to emergency petitions, most courts are of the mind that it needs to be a safety related issue. Has there been a threat physically or emotionally that is really severe that needs to be addressed by the court right away, that cannot wait for the normal procedures that the courts have through a custody modification or a petition for special relief or an expedited petition? If that is the case, then an emergency petition might be the route to go. Now, the other thing the court may look at is maybe someone's taken off with the child, so maybe they've absconded with the child, they've not returned the child, you don't know where the child is. And you want to kind of, again, speak to your attorney because there are some situations where this might be custodial interference, which may be a crime, or kidnapping even. So you also, like I said, want to speak with an attorney about that because you may have other avenues that can help you effectuate getting your child back quicker than going through the court. But if you feel that an emergency petition is the right thing to do for your case and your lawyer agrees with you, filing an emergency petition can be done one or several ways. Now, back before the courts closed prior to COVID, and I'm including this part in the video because the courts are starting to open back up, what would generally happen in Philadelphia County is that you would prepare your petition, and you can get the forms for an emergency petition offline at courts.phila.gov, and I'll put that link in the notes below. You would get the petition from there. You would complete the petition following their instructions, or your attorney would prepare it for you. And generally, you would take this document not to the clerk's office on the 11th floor. You would actually take it to the master's unit. And that is because in Philadelphia County, generally a master is reviewing the emergency filings before they get to a judge. So they're kind of pre-screening them. And the reason that they generally do this is because a lot of things that to us as parents that seem like an emergency situation is not an emergency situation for an emergency petition. Again, think about it. They're thinking about the safety of the child. Is there a risk of danger or harm that is imminent? So in that situation, you might sometimes see the master, whoever's screening the cases, say that this is not an emergency case. Now, what they'll often do is they'll hand your emergency petition back to you. Again, another tip to remind you of when you're preparing this document, because they are often reading it and maybe not talking to you, is to make sure that you spell out the reasons for your emergency in your paper. Because if you don't do that, then they might just look at the face of it and determine that there's not a safety issue. So you want to be clear about why there is a risk to the child in your pleadings. Now, when you get that paperwork back, if they agree that it's an emergency situation, they may hold a hearing right then. They will ask you if you tried to contact the other parent or other party, and if so, how you've done that. And they may just do a hearing right then. They may walk you over to a judge. So there's a number of things that could happen depending on, again, the level of emergency situation in your papers. If they deny it, or if the master believes that there is not an emergency issue, they can do a couple of things. They can tell you that you want to just go ahead and file any other petition that you can file, a modification, maybe a petition to expedite your case might be the appropriate thing for you to do. Remember, they're not going to give you legal advice. That is not what they're there to do, but they may direct you in the right way or what they believe might be able to help you get a resolution to your problem. They may also tell you to, if they do agree that you have an emergency situation, that's when they'll actually tell you to go to the court's clerk of court to file your petition. And that's when it's going to get timestamped, and that's when you're going to have to pay the filing fee. If they deny it, often they're giving it back to you. What I've done as a practice tip is to actually have them file any emergency petitions that are denied. So later on, when there's an issue before the court, we get before a judge and we try to resolve a situation, we can show the court that there was an emergency petition that was filed and denied by the court. That is helpful because sometimes we have some judges who may say, well, if it was an emergency situation or if it was a risk of harm situation, you would have done something about it right away. And when they don't timestamp and file your emergency petitions when they're denied, there's no evidence other than what you brought in that you actually tried to do something. So I like to get our emergency petitions timestamped even if they're denied, because I can use that later in court if I need to, in another process. That my client did try to get an emergency petition heard before the court, and it was denied by the court. And look, the situation is still happening and it's still an issue. Again, you want to speak with your attorney about the right thing to do. In most other counties, your emergency petitions are going to get docketed no matter what happens, and they're going to, if they're denied, it's still in the record that they were denied. So I think that generally it should happen in every case, but that's generally how Philadelphia County is doing them. Now that because of COVID being in place, a lot of the emergency petitions are being accepted via fax. Before we get to that and I explain those procedures, I'm going to quickly tell you that Philadelphia County right now is accepting a lot of filings by you walking them in and dropping them in a drop box. You want to make sure you have everything together, your copies and your payment ready to go, and you can put it in the drop box. So that is an option that previously was only available to attorneys, and now is available. My understanding is that it's available to the general public. But emergency petitions can be emailed, and that's kind of how the court has been doing them since the pandemic. There are instructions that are clear about what needs to be attached to emergency petition, which usually does not just include the emergency petition itself. It must also include either a modification or a contempt petition or something else if there's no open case. So you want to make sure you read the instructions carefully, that you speak to your attorney about this, and that you make sure your emergency petition is as complete as possible so that it doesn't get kicked back. Now, generally with emergency petitions, these things are getting reviewed right away. And usually you'll hear something from the court within 24 to 48 hours, again, depending on the level of urgency of your case. And they may tell you that your emergency petition is denied, or they may tell you these are the next steps. Generally, when you have an emergency petition, the next step is for you to have a hearing, which may or may not include the other party. And then if they make a decision right then, you're going to usually get another rule to show cause, which basically means that you have an order to appear to, and the other side must appear to argue why the relief that was granted should not become permanent relief. So usually that's done within 10 days. The other party will get an opportunity to show up and argue their side of the case. So it won't be completely one-sided, especially if someone's not telling the truth in the emergency petition. And you want to make sure that if you're on the other side of that you show up. And if you are the person who asked for the emergency petition in the first place, you want to make sure you showed up so your emergency petition doesn't get vacated. All right, I kind of went over this really quickly. But again, the instructions are very clear. They're on the courts.phila.gov website. And if you have a question about this, you can call our office. The number is below in the comments, as well as our website, so that you can request a consultation. We definitely understand that there's been a lot of emergency issues that have to deal with the safety of the child, whether it's something, protection from abuse, or whether it's just, a situation regarding neglect, or whatever the case may be. And those things are time sensitive. And it's important for you to understand that no matter what's going on, the courts have made it possible for people to get those types of things heard right away. They are the things that need to be addressed right away, and there are still ways and will continue to be ways for you to do them. You just have to know how to figure that out, and that can be done by finding a competent attorney, as well as making sure that you go to the court's website to get that information. All right, I hope you found this information helpful and useful. We're back to doing our videos again. If there are topics you would like us to cover, please put that in the comments below. If you have any questions that we can answer on an informational basis regarding emergency petitions in Philly County or any other county for that matter, please drop that below as well. This show is here for you, and I want to make sure that we answer your questions. So again, give us topics, give us issues. Do not give your personal information in the comments below, but we are here to try to answer your questions. All right, until next time, take care.